Sponsored by Stunning Podcast. Psychology Redefined Saifuden Almehairy, a prominent engineer, author, and influencer, has been nominated for the UAE Nobel Prize Award for his groundbreaking work on human consciousness. His book, Your Brain Isn't in Your Head, delves into his extraordinary personal journey and presents a revolutionary theory that challenges conventional understanding.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty fundamental, that idea you probably hold quite deeply, that your brain, that lump of tissue in your skull, is where you actually live. We're going to challenge that. We're diving into the work of Saifuden Almehairy, specifically his book, You Are Not Your Brain. And look, this isn't just some abstract thought experiment. It's a direct hit on centuries of thinking in neuroscience and psychology. Our goal here is simple: help you quickly get your head around the argument that maybe, just maybe, consciousness isn't all in your head, that it's distributed. And yeah, that means rethinking this whole brain is king idea.
Yeah, and it's important to understand the sheer weight of that idea we're pushing against. I mean, for centuries, the brain's been seen as the master organ, the CEO of the self. We've all been kind of conditioned academically and culturally to prioritize reason, logic, the stuff the brain does well. But, and this is key, that focus almost always sidelines the rest of our being, our body, our gut feelings, our energy.
Okay, let's jump right in with this pretty jarring analogy the author uses right off the bat. Almehairy isn't subtle. He says, you are not a machine with a brain, but a symphony with a soul. And then, maybe even more startling, he calls the physical brain mostly hard disk. Wow, okay, so if the brain's just the hard disk, like the storage, what's running the show? What's the operating system?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it immediately takes us outside the standard textbook view. If the brain is mainly storage and, let's say, a relay station for learned stuff and survival programs, then consciousness itself, that creative spark, must come from somewhere else, or perhaps everywhere else. The author's really pushing for a new perspective here, saying that 3-pound organ, yeah, it's vital, but seeing it as the entire self is just incomplete, deeply incomplete.
Right. So phase one is kind of dismantling this brain empire, as the book calls it. I mean, neuroscience is amazing, right? We can map pathways, pinpoint areas for memory, language. It's incredible stuff. But the book argues the big mistake was admiring the maps so much, we thought it was the actual territory. We saw the brain involved in everything conscious.
And jumped to the conclusion that it must create consciousness. It's a logical leap, but maybe a flawed one. Almehairy basically says, hold on. He argues the brain isn't the sole generator. Yes, it's complex, vital, way more than just storage, but it's still just one piece of a bigger puzzle.
Okay, so if it's not the generator, what is its main role in this symphony, let's call it? And yeah, what's the operating system?
The book describes it as a highly sophisticated receiver, processor, and communicator. Think of it like the most advanced modem imaginable, plugged into this vast network that is you. It pulls in signals from your entire body, deals with stuff from the outside world, sends out commands. It's absolutely crucial, the central hub, you could say. But its job is managing the information flow, not originating the consciousness itself. And that shift in perspective opens the door to the main idea: distributed consciousness.
Distributed consciousness. That's the core concept we need to unpack. Consciousness isn't just locked away in the skull, it's spread out across the whole body. And even, the author suggests, into energetic and collective fields, which sounds pretty out there initially. So where specifically does the book say this intelligence is located, if not just the brain?
Well, it points to several key areas: the heart, the spinal cord, the gut, places we intuitively link with feeling and instinct, right?
Yeah.
And even down to the cellular level, our energetic systems. It essentially reframes the self. Not a single command post, but a whole ecosystem. Every part contributing, every part holding some form of intelligence, some piece of our overall awareness. Our mind becomes a property of the whole system, not just the brain tissue.
Okay, so let's explore that ecosystem. Let's go outside the skull. The book talks about specific centers of intelligence. Where do we start?
Let's start with the heart. Intuitively, poetically, we've always connected the heart with deep feeling, with our core self. But this isn't just poetry anymore.
Right, the source dives into this. We usually think pump, biology 101. But the book talks about the heart's intelligence, intuition, emotion, even, it says, decision-making.
Yeah. Well, it points directly to the science of neurocardiology. There's literally a brain in the heart. It sounds dramatic, but the heart has around 40,000 specialized neurons forming their own complex network. And get this, This heart brain doesn't just take orders from the head brain, it actually sends more information up to the cranial brain than it receives. Think about that.
Whoa, okay. So the heart is actively sending signals up, signals carrying emotional data, intuitive hits. That completely changes how we think about making decisions, doesn't it? It's not just the cortex crunching numbers.
Exactly. The heart also generates this powerful electromagnetic field, the strongest in the body, extending out from us, and it changes based on how we feel. The book suggests our intuition, that gut feeling, might actually be the heart's rapid processing kicking in before our slower, logical brain even gets going.
Okay, heart intelligence. What about the spine? Usually just seen as the wiring cabinet, right? The highway for messages between brain and body.
Yeah, the standard view is passive relay. But this perspective sees the spinal cord as an active co-participant in shaping our sense of self. It processes information locally, reacting super fast. Think about pulling your hand from a hot stove. That reflex happens in the spine before your brain even registers ouch. It's a form of distributed, immediate intelligence, bodily autonomy.
And then there's maybe the most startling idea for many, cellular memory. This suggests memory isn't just filed away neatly in the brain's hippocampus or whatever.
Right. The book brings up those controversial but fascinating transplant stories, where a recipient suddenly develops a craving or a skill or even a personality trait that belonged to the donor. It points toward somatic memory, the idea that the body itself, right down to our cells, stores information, stores experiences. If a memory or a preference can theoretically reside in a donated organ, well, then the body isn't just dumb matter controlled by the brain. It's an intelligent participant. And this is crucial for understanding things like trauma. The book argues it's not just a mental scar, it's physically encoded in our tissues.
Okay, this is getting complex. Brain, heart, spine, gut, cells, all potentially holding intelligence. How do they all work together? How do they communicate without becoming, fragmented? What connects it all?
That's where the unifying framework comes in, what Almehairy terms the Saifuden code. Now, don't think of this as another body part. It's more like the underlying operating system, the integrated network protocol, maybe. It's the conceptual glue that connects the physical body, the energetic systems, and the informational layers of our consciousness. It allows all these different centers to talk to each other coherently.
So the brain is the hard disk and modem, maybe.
Yeah.
But the Saifuden code is like the invisible Wi-Fi network connecting the heart's wisdom, the gut's instinct, the spine's reflexes, everything.
And that's a good way to put it. It's the basis for coherence, for harmony.
Wow.
Which brings us to that recurring phrase in the book, capital cities always center. The analogy is that our personal capitals, these different centers of intelligence, need to be in balance, working together, harmonized, not one center, especially the brain, dominating all the others.
But is there a risk of just swapping one boss for another, like making the heart the new ruler instead of the brain? How does the source suggest we achieve real balance, not just a power shift?
Good question. The goal isn't a new dictatorship. It's more like a well-functioning parliament. Each center has its voice. When the brain runs the show alone, we can get stuck in overthinking, analysis paralysis, feeling disconnected from our own lives. True coherence, the book argues, comes from finding that resonance integrating the brain's logic with the heart's intuitive wisdom and the gut's raw instinct. This is the shift from what it calls a static brain-bound self to a much more dynamic, holistic selfhood. And embracing that means fundamentally accepting that our bodies aren't just vehicles carrying our brains around. They're intelligent, feeling, knowing participants in our being.
What's really interesting is how this whole idea, which feels so cutting edge or even radical in our Western context, is framed in the book as, well, not new at all.
Exactly. It's presented as an ancient truth being rediscovered or maybe revalidated by modern science. The source material points heavily towards wisdom traditions that always saw the body this way. Think about yogic traditions and the chakras, energy centers throughout the body, or Chinese medicine with its meridians mapping the flow of life force, qi, or shamanic practices that talk about cellular memory, ancestral trauma stored in the body, communicating with the spirit body. These aren't new concepts globally.
So what we're seeing now is this modern awakening, where our own science is finally starting to provide evidence for things these traditions knew intuitively. What specific fields are bridging that gap, helping those walls between, say, science and spirituality to crumble?
Well, besides neurocardiology, which we mentioned, the book highlights psychoneuroimmunology, or PNI, and epigenetics. PNI is fascinating. It proves scientifically how our thoughts, emotions, stress levels directly impact our immune system function throughout the entire body. There's concrete evidence. Mind and body aren't separate departments run solely by the brain. They're deeply systemically interconnected.
And epigenetics, that ties right back into the cellular memory idea, doesn't it? How our environment and experiences can actually change how our genes express themselves.
Absolutely. Epigenetics shows that experiences, especially things like trauma, aren't just fleeting mental events. They can leave biochemical marks on our DNA, influencing our health, our predispositions, even potentially being passed down. It lends serious scientific weight to that concept of somatic memory, that our life story is written not just in our minds, but in our very cells. And that understanding is really what turns this book from just theory into a practical guide.
Right. That's the crucial next step for anyone listening. This isn't just head stuff. The book pushes for specific actions, ways to actually use this holistic model to live better, to overcome that fragmentation we often feel.
Yes, it's very action-oriented. It really urges you to start listening differently, to tune into your body's signals, that gut instinct, and not just intellectualize everything, to perhaps explore body-centered therapies to release trauma stored somatically. It encourages making decisions that integrate the heart's feeling, not just the head's logic, to value intuition, spiritual insight, as legitimate forms of intelligence alongside rationality. It's about actively working to reconnect all these parts into a more whole, purposeful self.
So wrapping this up, the big takeaway seems to be this major perspective shift. We move from seeing the brain as the lonely architect of me to seeing it as, a vital player, but just one instrument in this incredible living symphony that is our whole being.
And there's this sense of momentum the author conveys. This isn't just a fringe idea anymore. This paradigm shift, this advancing revolution of new awareness, as he puts it, is gaining traction. Ancient wisdom is meeting modern science. So the final thought, the provocative question the book leaves you with, is basically, this train is leaving the station. It's a new way of understanding ourselves, and it's picking up speed. Are you going to jump on board or risk getting left behind in an outdated model of who you are?
It's a long